preparing for pupillage interviews, I want you to treat this like training and not passive listening, because what I'm about to walk you through is not just how to answer questions, it's how to think like a barrister in an interview room. And once you understand and get that shift, let me tell you, everything changes. Pupillage interviews are not about intelligence. Hello and welcome back to the Diary of a Barrister, the Lawyer Diaries. I'm Chelsea Brooke-Ward, I'm your host. I'm an employment barrister at Park Square Barristers, and today we're going to be talking again about pupillage interviews because we're at that stage in time. So we're going to be discussing how to answer questions with confidence, clarity and strategy, and understanding the game of pupillage. So welcome back. This is not going to be a short episode. It is going to be a master class. So sit down, get comfy, strap yourself in, because if you're preparing for pupillage interviews, I want you to treat this like training and not passive listening, because what I'm about to walk you through is not just how to answer questions, it's how to think like a barrister in an interview room. And once you understand and get that shift, let me tell you, everything changes. And let me start with something that might surprise you. Pupillage interviews are not about intelligence. They're not about who knows the most law. They're not about who has the best grades. Because the reality is, by the time you're sitting in that room, everybody is capable. Everybody has mini pupillages. Everybody has legal work experience. Everybody has some law degree or equivalent. Everybody has the credentials on paper. So what separates candidates? What separates you from other candidates? And ultimately, the interview comes down to, in my opinion, three main questions. Can I trust you? Can I train you? And do you fit in effectively? And that's it. But when you boil those questions down even further, the reality is the interview and each question that is asked is asking one simple question. Can I trust you? Every single question you are asked is designed to test whether or not you are a safe pair of hands. Trust. Now, here is where most candidates go wrong. They treat each question as separate. They think they're trying to be tripped up. Think the question is designed with some ulterior motive. Wrong. It's about trust. Candidates think this is a motivation question. This is a competency question. This is an ethical question. Yes, that might be the topic of the question, but at its essence, it's all the same question. They all elicit trust. Can I trust you? But they're just dressed differently. So when chambers ask, why do you want to be a barrister? They're really asking, can I trust your motivation? Can I trust you understand what you're getting yourself into? Can I trust you will do a good job? Can I trust your integrity? And when they ask, tell me about a time you failed, they're really asking, can I trust how you respond under pressure? Can I trust your objective? And can I trust you have the ability to self-reflect? Trust. And when they ask, why this chambers? They're asking, can I trust you will stay here? Can I trust you will contribute? Can I trust you will fit in? And when they ask you something difficult, something you don't know, they're really asking or trying to elicit, can I trust you're truthful? Can I trust you're teachable? Can I trust I can train you? Can I trust your integrity? And once you understand that at its basic core, a pupillage interview is a recruitment exercise for a business, and the business is built on trust, and ultimately it's all about showing you're trustworthy, your answers stop being random and they start becoming strategic. And I know I've said this before, but it is really important because it's a massive thing that people overlook. Now, let's get practical, because structuring an answer is everything. And there is a structure that underpins every strong answer in a pupillage interview. And if you take nothing else from this session, take this. Every single answer should follow the prove method. Now, there are two different for prove depending on the type of question that you're being asked. So if it is a question about you personally, then the prove method is this. Point. The point that you are making, or the point in time. The reason you have chosen the point, the outcome or the overview, the value you can add to chambers, and the ending of your answer. Now, just bear in mind at this stage that if you are answering a hypothetical, ethical type question, what would you do in these circumstances? The format of prove changes slightly, and we'll come on to that when we get to that stage. But just for the bitches in the back, I will say that again. So the point you're making, or the point in time. Reason. The reason you've chosen that point. Outcome or overview. The summary overview of the point you're making. So that is an extended version of the point you're making. And the value. What value that evidences you can bring to chambers. And then the ending. The conclusion. So I want to go through that with some different questions, some commonly asked questions that you will most likely be asked in interview. A big one, a big one. Why this chambers? And this question really can make or break an interview. And it's wild to me. Most candidates get it wrong because they answer things such as, you've got a great reputation, you do high quality work in X area, I was impressed by your website, I was impressed by your ranking in Legal 500 or Chambers and Partners. That is not an answer, and I don't care what you say, it's not an honest answer. So the trust has plummeted massively if that's the way that you open or the way that you answer the question, because to me that's a brochure and it's licking arse. But is it genuine? And you know, chambers are looking for alignment between you, them, your practice, your history, your experience. And they want to know why us specifically. Can they trust you are committed to them? Why them long term? Can they trust you will stay? Will you contribute? Can they trust you will pull your weight? And a strong answer to this question generally has three elements: commitment, connection, and contribution. Commitment, connection, and contribution. So you really need to ask, why does this chambers make sense for you? Not why does this chambers make sense in general? Why does this chambers make sense to clients? Why does this chambers make sense to a particular practice area? But why does it make sense to you? And answering a question genuinely, authentically, and honestly is a big must when you think back to the basic core of what the interviewers are trying to elicit from you: trust. And if you start by answering a question disingenuously, then the trust is broken. And let me tell you, if you don't already know, trust takes a long time to build and seconds to lose. So take note. Why are you applying to that chambers? And if you don't have an answer, then you need to try and understand why it is you think that you would be happy there. You've got to have some genuine reason that is your own. And that might be location. It might be you want to practice on the North Eastern Circuit, or you want to practice in central London. That might be your answer. It might be the practice area. You might want to undertake pupillage in a niche area and they're offering pupillage in a niche area. They might have a phenomenal reputation in a particular practice area, and that's the practice area you want to pursue your career in. It might be the people. You might have done many pupillages there and you had a great rapport with them. What is your reason? You've also got to think about how your reason answers the can I trust you'll stay? Can I trust you're committed? Are you building a career at that particular chambers? Or, and some candidates do, are you attempting to use that chambers as a stepping stone to qualify and then move on, jump ship to another chambers? People do that, and chambers are aware that people do that, and they do not want to invest their time, money, energy, because having a pupil and training a pupil is a big, big commitment. And yes, if you stay, that pays off to chambers, and that's why they do it. And that's why it's really important that they want to pick somebody that they can trust will stay and be committed to them. So how can you differentiate yourself between your reasons and other people's reasons? Do not answer this question disingenuously and like a brochure. A lot of people use this, because I can remember when I was at university, we were told, you know, read Chambers website, read Legal 500, read cases that they've, you know, that member of Chambers have done. And that is all good and well. It's great to learn about the areas that they practice in, and it's good to understand the ethos and values of Chambers. But reading the website and cherry picking parts of it that you think sound impressive but are not really aligned or mean anything to you just to answer the question is advocated for. It's not recommended. If you do read the website and there is something on there that does resonate with you, genuinely resonate with you, then fine, by all means use it. But don't just use it because you think it sounds impressive or you think it's the answer that they're looking for, because it's not. Now, when we discussed this question, commitment, connection and contribution, can you contribute to this particular set of chambers? This is a business and you are going to be self-employed. Can you be self-sufficient in this particular chambers? Now, can you think of right now examples to speak to each of those areas? Commitment, connection and contribution. Pause this right now and jot them down. Now, hopefully you've done that exercise. Now I want you to use those examples and try and structure your answer using the prove structure. So a strong answer to why this chambers might sound like, I'm only applying to sets on the North Eastern Circuit. I want a career in an area that I'm familiar with and I can see myself long term. I've undertaken minis outside, such as in London and Midlands, and honestly, I cannot see myself commuting nor moving, and I don't feel like I belonged there. I was born and raised in Leeds and I've no desire to move. I have a settled family life with a mortgage and my teenage daughter has just started high school. I intend to commit myself long term to the chambers, and I've done a number of mini pupillages at this particular chambers. I got on well with X, Y and Z. I know the pupils are well supported from those conversations. I also understand that the employment team is a growing area within chambers and I want to be part of something, part of building something. previously been a business owner, and I build a business and brand from scratch, and I believe that I can utilise those skills to help contribute to building the employment team. Therefore, I'm only applying to sets where I can see myself long term and an integral part of the team and adding value. The point, I'm only applying to sets on the North Eastern Circuit. The reason, I was born and raised here and have no desire to be anywhere else. The overview, settled family life with a mortgage, daughter at high school. So that is an expansion on the point. So why just the North Eastern Circuit? I've got a mortgage and I've got a teenage daughter going to high school. So you're expanding on the point. The value is the long-term commitment to chambers. You can also add into the value, so other additional bits. So of course, applying to the North Eastern Circuit is the point, and the value from that point is that I intend to commit myself long term to the chambers, and you need to evidence that you understand what value you can add to chambers as well. So the employment team, from doing mini pupillages, understanding the employment team was a growing area and that built a business from scratch and can utilise those skills to bring value to chambers to help build the employment team. And then the ending is simply a conclusion, only applying to sets where I can see myself long term, and this chambers is one of them. Short, succinct, straight to the point, stability, intentionality and value. Now, using your 3 examples that you've just written down, pause this again and see whether you can utilise the prove method to structure your answer. I'll be waiting here when you get back. So, hopefully you've done that exercise. I want to now go on to another commonly asked question. Why do you want to be a barrister? And I think I got asked this question in every goddamn interview. And you'd think it was one of the most easiest questions to answer. But for some reason, I really struggled with this. And I'll be honest with you, I think the reason in the beginning that I struggled to answer this question was because I was trying to sound like somebody else. I was trying to answer this question like I thought they wanted to hear, like I thought a barrister sounded. And that's one of the biggest mistakes candidates make, is trying to sound like something that they are not. And we will go back to the point. If you are disingenuous, you're not authentic, the trust again is destroyed. Now, your story is your advantage, not only because it shows you're authentic and genuine, but it's also the very thing that makes you stand out from everybody else, because that's all you've got. So use your story. Stop trying to sound like you think a barrister sounds, like professional. It doesn't make you sound professional, it makes you forgettable. Your story is not a weakness, it is your advantage. And the biggest cliche type advice that I can give you is just be yourself. If you've taken a non-traditional route, use it. If you've worked in another industry, use it. If you've had challenges, use them. Because chambers are not recruiting perfect candidates. They are recruiting real people who will represent real people who can operate in the real world. So, be real. If you run a business, that's not just experience. That's client management, financial awareness, responsibility, resilience. So instead of saying, I have good communication skills, that is a skill. And that is great. But it tells the listener, the interviewer, nothing. Because anybody can say, I've got good communication skills. You could go a bit deeper, because anybody can say, I've got good communication skills. Vague answers, avoid them. I run my own business and developed the ability to communicate with a wide range of individuals, managed competing priorities and made decisions under pressure. And these all translate directly into practice at the bar. Well, communication, managing priorities, making decisions under pressure are things that you will do at the bar. But all that is a list of character traits. And again, tells the listener, tells the interviewer nothing more. It doesn't really answer the question, doesn't evidence that you're trustworthy, doesn't evidence that you can be trusted to commit to chambers, to commit to the profession, to commit to the client. They're just bare assertions with no evidence. Remember the prove method. Point: I want a career that's fast-paced and keeps me on my toes. Reason: I started a business from nothing, and having that intellectual curiosity that differs day to day is something that I thrive on. Overview: I opened a cafe. I worked 14-hour days in the beginning, building a brand using social media and getting our name out there and building a reputation. I used word of mouth and flyers to generate my own business. Initially, this started as an eating cafe and I worked up to delivery and outside catering. I managed a team of 6 staff in a number of years. And also, when my child was born, I also managed the business with a newborn. I still run the business when I went back to university full-time to study law. When my daughter was just 3 months old, I achieved a first-class law degree. I run this business successfully for 8 years before leasing it to pay for and focus on my bar course. I believe this shows that I have the business acumen to build my own practice. I can utilise those skills to ensure that I am self-sufficient to build relationships and rapport with solicitors and clients alike value. I understand that the bar is fast-paced and overwhelming, but from my experience, I understand that it shows that I am somebody that thrives under pressure. And of course, these are just example answers that are taken from my banked scenarios from when I was applying for pupillage. And your reasons will fit into the format and the structure quite easily, but you need to have an understanding of what it is that they're looking for and how to answer the question. So from the question that we've just looked at, career that is fast-paced. Reason: well, I started a business from nothing and enjoyed it. Overview: worked 14-hour days, built a business from scratch, used social media, built a reputation, was able to generate business, was able to scale that business, was able to manage a number of staff, was able to do that whilst also caring for a child, whilst also doing a full-time law degree and achieving a first class, and then sold that to pay for the bar course. That answer shows time management. It shows motivation. It shows commitment. It shows the ability to work under pressure. It shows the ability to prioritise. It shows the ability to achieve good outcomes under pressure. And it also shows commitment to the profession by selling a successful business to pay for this profession and also moving from that profession to this profession as a priority. I don't also need to say I can manage my time effectively, I work well under pressure, I'm committed to this profession. The specific circumstances of that overview say that. I don't need to insult their intelligence by listing those skill sets. They want specific evidence that validates, corroborates that you have the skill set to succeed at the bar. Now, if you feel you need to list the skill set because that makes you comfortable, then fine. But start with your overview and list the skill set under the value part. But I just don't think you need to list it all. The specific circumstances should speak for themselves. Now, competency questions are questions such as, tell me about a time you've worked under pressure, tell me about a time you've showed leadership, tell me about a time you've dealt with confidence, tell me about a time you've dealt with conflict. Most candidates answer these like a story, and that's where they go wrong. You're not telling a story, you're proving a skill. So your structure should follow the prove method. Point. During my degree, I balanced full-time study with running a business and caring responsibilities. Each of these takes considerable time, and yet despite the demands of each, I was able to do them all at the same time and achieve great results. I implemented a strict timetable, prioritising tasks based on deadlines and complexity. Naturally, my studies were my priority, and therefore the time dedicated to those were non-negotiable. This meant that I sacrificed family and social time. As a result, I was able to meet all my commitments and achieved a first-class law degree. I understand the bar is demanding. I'm able to prioritise and manage my time effectively to meet client and court expectations whilst performing very well under sustained pressure, which I believe is directly relevant to the demands of practice at the bar. I will implement each of these skills during my pupillage. Point. During my degree, balanced full-time studies, run a business and cared for a daughter. Reason. Each of those is a time-consuming, difficult task. And the reason that I've chosen that is because I was able to do each of them exceptionally well. And then the outcome. How was it that I was able to achieve the point? The value. Why does that relate to, or how can that add value to Chambers? And then the ending. And it's easy using this format to remember all the elements that you need to get in there to show that you are somebody that is trustworthy. You've got the point, you've got the reason, you've got the overview, you've got the value to Chambers, and then you conclude. It is very, very difficult using this format to miss things out. You need structured, relevant answers. Failure type questions is another big one in interview for pupillage. So let's address one of the most unforgettable questions. Tell me about a failure. This is where candidates panic the most. What do you mean, tell me about a failure? This is going to show how much of a loser I am. No, it's not. And that is not the reason they are asking this question. The reason that they're asking this question is they want to be able to understand whether they can trust you or not. They don't want you to pretend you haven't failed or bluff your way through this question, because it's obvious. Everybody has failed at some point in their life. And I can name a number of famous celebrities or people that are now considered geniuses or experts in their field. Thomas Edison, how many times did he not get the light bulb correctly? And I think there's a quote saying, I didn't fail 10,000 times, I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. The Beatles, how many times were they rejected before they became global stars? Here's a big one. Walt Disney. Walt fucking Disney was told he had no creative imagination. Imagine that! Imagine that! So don't sit there and say to these people that you've never failed, because that is just a pure lie. And I don't care who you are, you will have failed at something in your life. And through that failure, you will have learned something. And it's those learning steps and those learning experiences that they are looking for. Do you have the ability to be objective and self-reflect? Because that is a great quality and characteristic in showing somebody that you're trustworthy. Chambers are not looking for perfection, they're looking for insight. And a strong answer will acknowledge what happened, what you learned, and what changed. So, for example, point. In 2007, I made the decision to step away from my legal studies. I dropped out of my law degree. Reason. It was not the right time for me financially or personally. Outcome. I did feel that this was a failure. I struggled substantially with the pace. I struggled with the intellect and prioritising work over studies. And prioritising work and studies over social and family matters, and the decision quite frankly haunted me for a number of years. When I became a mother, something ignited in me and I wanted to prove to her that you can achieve anything you put your mind to. So with the benefit of hindsight, while that was a difficult decision, returning later allowed me to approach my studies with greater focus and maturity, which resulted in a stronger academic performance, and I was able to achieve the second time round a first-class law degree. And that experience taught me the importance of timing, resilience and self-awareness. I was able to make the right objective decision regardless of how difficult it was. I understood that pursuing something when the outcome was inevitable was not worth my time nor their time. And so I decided in 2007 to withdraw from the law degree. That's honest, it's reflected, it's grounded. Point: dropped out of a law degree in 2007. Reason: wasn't the right time. Outcome: what did I learn from that? Value: how can that add value to Chambers? I was able to make the right objective decision regardless of how difficult it was. And then at the end, the conclusion. So can you think of a time when you have failed at something and apply the prove method? Think of 3. I like the number 3. 3 is a magical number. So think of 3 times when you feel like you've failed at something and you've learned something from that failure. Pause it now, write it down and come back and let me know how you get on. So moving on, handling questions you don't know. These may be off the cuff weird questions. They may be questions such as how many post boxes are there in the UK? How many bananas are consumed in the UK? 2 questions I was asked. Or they may be questions, what would you do in this situation? So ethical type questions. And the proof format changes for these. So we have point, reasoning, overview, outcome, validate and evidence. These are forward facing questions, and don't forget the basic fundamentals that the panel are looking for. Trust. This again is still critical to these types of questions, and it's guaranteed that you may be asked something that you don't know, and sometimes that is intentional. They are testing, do you panic, do you bluff, do you stay composed? The correct approach to these questions is stay calm, acknowledge your limits, work through what you do know. Most of the time, application of common sense will do the job. So, for example, if you're asked to remark on a case but you haven't read it, you could answer something with, I'm not familiar with that specific case, but my understanding of the principle is X, Y, and Z. Or, I'm not familiar with the case, but if you can elaborate on the findings, I could answer with my opinion that way. Be confident, but also know your limits. And don't be afraid to show that you understand your limits. Because if you try and bluff your way through, you're going to lose that trust immediately. If you answer a question by saying you don't know, that shows honesty, composure, and trainability. Because those that think they know the answer to everything, but don't, are untrainable. Bluffing will end your chances immediately. I can guarantee it. Ethical type questions. So an example could be, what would you do if a client confessed to committing a serious crime but had not been charged with it? So applying the prove method. Point: nothing. Reason: I'm to act in my client's best interests. Outcome: it's not something the client has been charged with and our discussions are confidential. Validate: the rules indicate I'm not permitted to mislead the court, and given it's not a matter before the court, the likelihood of that is limited. Evidence: I was told that he hadn't yet been committed with this particular offence, and of course I would need to keep the matter under review if the circumstances changed. Straight to the point. And again, even if you didn't know about the rules, just applying a bit of common sense to that probably would get you through. Now, I want to talk about something that is quite important but often massively overlooked, and that's the delivery of how you say things. And how you deliver an answer is really important. So let's talk about delivery, because you can have the best answer in the world and yet still lose the room. Now, Chambers are not looking for for perfect answers. I know that may come as a surprise, but they're not. They're looking for clear, structured and measured answers, not rushed, not over-rehearsed, not robotic, not disingenuous. And confidence doesn't come from talent. And I'm going to be honest with you now. I thought people were born confident. When I first started bar school, I sat in the room and I looked around and thought, look at all these lucky twats. They were just born that way. And it's not true. Confidence is like a muscle. It comes from practice and preparation done repeatedly over time. So if you feel like you're not the most confident person in an interview or in a particular setting, the more you practice, the more you become natural at it. And the thing that you need to do to build that muscle is put yourself in situations that are outside your comfortable norms and do that repeatedly over time. If you stay within the confines of your comfort blanket, then you're never going to build that confidence trait. But trust me, it is something that can be built by repetition done repeatedly over time, and then it becomes comfortable. Have you ever learned to do a new skill? Learn to play the piano, learn to play the violin, the clarinet, learn a new language, anything that you start to do the first time, you always feel uncomfortable, shy, intimidated, a bit fearful, unless it's something that you're really excited about or you're really weird. You will have those feelings. It's just normal. But the more that you do it repeatedly over time, I think you'll agree with me that the more confident you become in just doing it, and it becomes natural. And interviewing, speaking is the same. Go to networking events and say to yourself, right, I'm going to speak to at least 3 people I don't know. And that's a non-negotiable. And the more times you do that, the more confident and comfortable you will feel speaking to new people. And the majority of the time when you enter an interview, they're going to be new people that you've never spoken to before. So give that a try and let me know how it goes. So before you go into any interview, ask yourself, what shows I am trustworthy? What shows I am teachable? What shows I am loyal? What shows I'm capable? And I want you to have 5 banked situations that you feel can speak to each of these. And you should have more than enough information to answer almost any question. And then once you have those 5 banked answers, go through some of the commonly asked questions using the proof format, and you should be ready and raring to go. So remember, pupillage interviews are not about being perfect. They're about being authentic and genuine and building trust. Good luck. If you enjoyed this episode, please give me a like, comment, review, whatever. And if you can share it with your friends, that would really help me out. But until next time, over and out. Bye.